So good morning, students. Today we will be starting with the treatment of amoebiasis. Okay. Now amoebiasis come under the category of the protozoal infection. So one of the protozoal infection is amoebiasis. Other than also there are many other infections like malaria, giardiasis, leishmaniasis, toxoplasmosis and trypanosomiasis. Today we will be covering amoebiasis infection. Now, what are the different problems with the protozoal infection and why it is difficult to develop the anti-protozoal drug? Because it is difficult to be treated than the bacterial infection, as protozoal cells are the eukaryotic cells. The same problem which we have discussed even in the fungal cell. And being a eukaryotic, they have a metabolic processes which are almost similar to the human host cell. The prokaryotic bacterial metabolic processes are not similar to the human cell, and hence they can be treated or that they can be targeted to inhibit their growth or to kill the microorganisms. But in protozoal cells, being a eukaryotic, they will have some similarity in their metabolic processes, and if we target those metabolic processes, it is possible that the human metabolic processes will also get affected, and that may result into certain toxicity or the side effects. So many anti-protozoal drugs cause the toxic effects to the host. Whereas the cells which have a high metabolic processes in the host tissues are more susceptible to get affected on exposure to the anti-protozoal drug. Like most of the cell like bone marrow stem cells which are rapidly multiplying, renal tubular cell or intestinal cell or the neuronal cells. So you will find that most of the anti-protozoal drug are affecting these areas of our body, bone marrow, kidney, intestine or the neuronal cells. Even another concern about the anti-protozoal drug is that being acting on the eukaryotic cell like a protozoa, they cannot be given safely in the pregnant ladies because they may have either a carcinogenic potential, mutagenic potential, or sometimes that may prove to be a teratogenic. So that is another constraint for the use of an anti-protozoal drug. Now moving ahead to the amoebiasis, you all know that this is how the amoeba looks, and this is end amoeba histolytica, and you can see that the tropozoites are there with ingested erythrocyte or the cyst. So how will you define amoebiasis? Amoebiasis is a protozoal infection. Where does it occur? In the intestinal tract, and that occurs due to ingestion of a food or the water which is contaminated with entamoeba histolytica cyst, the cyst form of the entamoeba histolytica. So amoebiasis is a protozoal infection of intestinal tract which occurs due to ingestion of food and water which is contaminated with entamoeba histolytica cysts. Now when we talk about a life cycle, now why should we understand the life cycle? See, being a pharmacist, we want to develop anti-amoebic drug. And now when we want to develop anti-amoebic drug, we should know the processes which are involved in the development of the amoeba, because the drug will go and target one of that process which is involved in the development of the amoeba. So what happens when the amoeba infection is contracted by the person? Either it is coming from any contaminated food or the water, which is containing the cyst form of the entamoeba histolytica. So the first step is a ingestion of the cyst. That is the first step we can target. Actually, we should not eat such a food which is spoiled with a, which is contaminated with a fecal material or any other material which is containing entamoeba histolytica in a cyst form. So hygienic food consumption is the first thing. Another, okay, fine, by accident or due to any other reason, if such a food or water has been consumed by the person, then what happens next to that? The cyst enters into the body and gets converted into the tropozoites. Tropozoites are the motile form. The cysts are the dormant form. And the tropozoites being a motile, they will penetrate into the intestinal wall. After penetrating into the intestinal wall, they will start multiplying within the colon wall. Now, as they start multiplying, they move into the circulation, and via circulation, they move via portal circulation, they will go to the liver, and via liver, they will come into the main circulation. So there will be a systemic invasion. Now, the cyst formation sometimes may occur in the rectum, because those tropozoites which are multiplying within the intestinal wall may lead to the formation of the cyst again into the rectum, and that cyst may get excreted to the fecal material, and such fecal material, if contaminates any food or the water, then there may be a problem with the spread of the amoebiasis. So this is how the spread of the amoebiasis, and this is how the life cycle of the amoebiasis takes place. Now, these are the things which depends upon our practices. That is cyst ingestion. If we are not eating outside food or the food which is contaminated with fecal material, we can prevent the entry of the Entamoeba histolytica. The second is the cyst formation is taking place in the rectum and it is getting excreted through the fecal material. So, you know, defecation habits, which are usually not practiced very well in India, and using our potable water for such activities, contaminating rivers or the water reservoirs. This is also in our control, and this can also be prevented with a good hygienic practices or the health practices. The remaining thing, that is formation of the protozoites, penetration within the intestinal wall, multiplication of the tropozoites, and its systemic invasion, this can be targeted with the help of a drug. But the first and the sixth thing is there, which if taken proper control, then the remaining things will not occur only. And that is why the habits of the patient or the community needs to be improvised. Now, moving towards the more detail, that if there is an ingestion of a cyst, then how does it is going to travel? Through the stomach, it will enter into the ileum. There will be multiplication. There will be formation of the tropozoites. Now you can see over here, these tropozoites are penetrating into the wall, and some of them are forming the cyst, which is moving to the colon wall and into the rectum, and through fecal material, it will get excreted. Now, the one which is moving, some tropozoites which are moving into the intestinal wall, they will multiply into the intestinal wall. And then they will move into, through portal circulation, they will move into liver. You can see they are moving into liver. So, there can be two types of amoebiasis. The one which you can see over here, which is growing into the intestine. So, that will be termed as an intestinal amoebiasis. If you eradicate the infection right at this point, then the systemic invasion will not take place. But if it is ignored at this point, then the systemic invasion will take place. The amoeba will move into liver, and then you have to use certain systemic amoebicide drug. So from this, you will understand that majorly there are two classes. The one that is luminal amoebicide. Why they are termed as luminal? Because these drugs are going to act in the lumen of an intestine, and they are going to kill the tropozoites which are multiplying within the lumen of the intestine. So they are termed as luminal amoebicide. Now, even if you look at the pharmacokinetics of this drug, diloxamide or paramomycin or idoquinol, the drug has a less systemic absorption. So the drug is going to get retained into the lumen and is going to kill these tropozoites in the lumen, and therefore they are termed as luminal amoebicide. Second category of the drug are systemic amoebicide. They will get systemically absorbed. They will not remain in the lumen. So they will not act against the tropozoites which are in the lumen. Since they are going to get absorbed systemically, they will preferably act on those tropozoites which have entered into our body systemically. Like for hepatic amoebiasis, which is called as a tissue amoebiasis, because here the tropozoites have entered through systemic circulation into the tissues like liver. So systemic amoebicides are also termed as a tissue amoebicidal drug. And you can see they are different. They are not the same which are used as luminal amoebicide. They are chloroquine, dihydroemetine, and emetine. So, depending upon which type of amoebiasis patient is he suffering from luminal amoebiasis or is he suffering from systemic amoebiasis? Accordingly, the treatment will differ. Another category of the drug here you can see is a mixed amoebicide. Mixed amoebicides are the drugs which will work against luminal as well as the systemic amoebicidal. So when you're not sure whether amoebiasis is now already penetrated within a systemic circulation or it is restricted only across the colon, then in that case, the mixed amebicide saddle drugs can be used. And a very well-known drug which comes under this category is metronidazole. So from this entire discussion, now it is must be clear in your mind that amebiasis can occur at two sites. One is across the lumen, which is termed as intestinal amebiasis. If not controlled at the right time, they may penetrate via intestinal wall into systemic circulation. And the second type of amebiasis is systemic amebiasis. Accordingly, we can classify the drugs which are controlling.
Ma'am.
Within a loop, 1 minute, Achal. Let me complete. So the drugs which are controlling the infection within a lumen are termed as luminal amebicide, and the drugs which are controlling the infection within a systemic circulation are termed as a systemic amebicide. And then we have a third category of the drug which are mixed amebicidal drug, which will act against both the luminal as well as a systemic amebicidal drug. Moving next to it, that is a life cycle of Entamoeba histolytica. You can see that there are two types of the Entamoeba histolytica. The one is a cyst form, which is infective. I told you that when the patient ingests cyst form of Entamoeba histolytica, then the patient will acquire the infection. What care we have to take is we have to take a care of a infective part of the Entamoeba histolytica, that is a cyst, which can survive outside the human body, and it gets transformed into the trophozoite inside the human body. Whereas trophozoites are the non-infective, but the danger is that they are invasive. They can reproduce. They may feed on the intestinal bacteria, which is our essential flora. Because they invade, they may ulcerate the wall of an intestine, of a large intestine. They may migrate to a liver or the other tissues. They may get transformed to the cyst, and they may get then excreted into the fecal material. So we cannot ignore trophozoites also. We have to control their multiplication also, because they are ultimately going to get transformed into cyst, and that is going to lead to spread of the amebiasis. So when a person becomes infected with Entamoeba histolytica, first the cyst is ingested. It travels through small intestine. As Entamoeba histolytica exists, divides into 8 trophozoites. The trophozoites multiply, invade, ulcerate the mucosa of large intestine. They survive on the intestinal bacterial flora. Then the trophozoites, some are carried to the rectum, where they get transformed into again a dormant form cyst, get excreted into a fecal material. Large amount of the trophozoites within the colon, they migrate through the colon wall into systemic circulation, and that leads to the systemic infection. The trophozoites which descend into the intestine, they make a flask-shaped abscess. The trophozoites which can enter into the bloodstream travel even to the other parts, mainly a liver, but sometimes they may migrate to other organs like lung, brain, and can cause abscess over there. In tissue, the cysts are not present. Only trophozoites are present. So when you are developing a tissue amebicide, your drug should target trophozoites. Now this is a clinical presentation. What will be the type of infection? The first type of infection may be asymptomatic, which is an intestinal infection. They just act as a carrier, and through their fecal material, the cysts are getting sprayed. Okay. The next is mild to moderate intestinal disease, which is non-dysenteric colitis. Another is a severe intestinal infection, which is obviously a dysentery, which we term as amebiasis. And there can be sometimes hepatic abscess. There may be ameboma, localized granulomatous lesions of the colon, and other extraintestinal diseases. Now we are coming to the classification of anti-amebic drug. When we classify anti-amebic drug, we can classify them as luminal amebicides. As I told you, that luminal amebicides are the one which are classified into category like amide, which includes diloxamide furoate, nitrosamide, 8-hydroxyquinone like quinidochlor, then dihydrohydroxine derivative like iodoquinol, and antibiotics like tetracycline. Then there are tissue or systemic amebicides for both intestinal and extraintestinal amebicides like nitroimidazole, metronidazole, tinidazole like or secnidazole or ornidazole. Then there are alkaloids like emetine or dihydroemetine, and for extraintestinal amebiasis there is a chloroquine, and for the mixed amebicidal drug there are metronidazole. So we have already seen a classification. I hope the classes are very clear, and now the examples are also clear. I repeat again: luminal amebicide drug, which include amide category, then which includes 8-hydroxyquinoline derivatives and diodohydroxyquine derivatives. We have antibiotics like tetracycline. We have tissue or systemic amebicides for both intestinal and extraintestinal amebiasis like nitroimidazole derivative like metronidazole, then tinidazole, secnidazole, and we have alkaloids which are selectively used for as a systemic amebicide, include emetine, dihydroemetine, and for extraintestinal amebiasis only a restricted drug is a chloroquine, whereas mixed amebicide is metronidazole. Now we are moving to the lumen amebicide. It acts on the parasite which is present in the lumen of a GIT. Lumen amebicides are used for treatment of asymptomatic amebiasis, diloxamide furoate, iodoquinol, antibiotics like paramomycin and tetracycline. Erythromycin can also be used. Then there is a tissue amebicide. Tissue amebicide are also termed as a systemic amebicide. This acts on the intestinal wall or a liver or any other extraintestinal tissue. This is used for treatment of systemic form of disease, which include intestinal wall infection or liver abscess. The example for this is emetine, dihydroemetine, chloroquine, which is used only for liver. Then we have mixed amebicidal drug, which are effective against both luminal as well as systemic. Although luminal concentration is too low for a single drug treatment, they are majorly used for systemic. Metronidazole, tinidazole, and many other examples which I already discussed. Now we are starting with the first and very important category of the drug, or which is used as a mixed amebicidal drug, and that is metronidazole. Metronidazole is not only used against amebiasis infection. It is a very broad spectrum cidal drug. It acts against protozoa, Entamoeba histolytica, including Giardia lamblia. In addition to these two protozoal infection, it is also effective against anaerobic bacterial infection like Bacteroid fragilis, Fusobacterium, Clostridium difficile, Helicobacter pylori, which causes ulcer, Campylobacter peptococci, and so on, like anaerobic streptococcal infections are also sensitive to metronidazole. Only bacteria which are not sensitive to metronidazole are the aerobic bacteria. So you can see that metronidazole has a very wide spectrum of activity. It is not only used against the protozoal infection and not only against the Entamoeba, but it is used also for other protozoal infection like Giardia lamblia. And in addition to that, it can also be used for various types of anaerobic bacterial infection. The only limitation is that it cannot be used against aerobic bacterial infection. Now, this is the structure of a metronidazole. And as we know that this is a mixed amebicide, it is always a choice for intestinal as well as extraintestinal. What is the important property is that it acts against trophozoites. It doesn't show its effect on the cyst. What is its important part is that it's a nitro group. You can see over here in the structure of a metronidazole, there is a nitro group which is present, and that is going to get reduced by certain redox proteins which are present within amoeba only, leading to the formation of cytotoxic reduced product. Now, this is a peculiarity of the drug, that this nitro group which is there in the structure will not get converted to the toxic metabolite by our host mechanism. If it has to get converted to the toxic metabolite, there has to be a presence of a parasite, and that parasite is only able to convert this drug to its toxic metabolite. So that makes the drug selectively acting against the parasite and not against the host cell. So after getting converted to the cytotoxic product, that product binds to the DNA and a protein and ultimately leads to the death of the parasite. The nitro radical, which just now we discussed of the metronidazole, it acts as an electron sink and it competes with the other electron acceptors of the anaerobic microorganism, and for the electrons generated usually by the pyruvate pathway, which includes ferredoxine oxidoreductase pathway or enzyme pathway, which is a pyruvate oxidatory pathway. And what happens is that this is interfering the pyruvate pathway, and therefore ATP generation will also get interfered, and the energy metabolism of the anaerobic bacteria will be disrupted, and aerobic environment will attenuate the cytotoxic activity of the metronidazole. So only in anaerobic bacteria this mechanism will take place, will interfere with the pyruvate oxidation, will interfere with the ATP generation, and will instead this activity will get attenuated in the aerobic environment, because there will be inhibition of this reducing reductive activation. So anaerobes which develop the metronidazole resistance, they usually become deficient of this mechanism which just now I discussed with you, that is this ferredoxine oxidoreductase mechanism. Metronidazole has been found to inhibit even the cell-mediated immunity, and therefore it induces mutagenesis, or it also leads to the radio sensitization. So this is a concise, you can say that this is a flow chart diagram where you can see that metronidazole enters inside the protozoal body. It gets, its nitro group gets converted to the toxic metabolite. This is a pathway, that is a ferredoxine, which gets oxidized to reduced form of the ferredoxine gets converted to its oxidized form, and metronidazole gets reduced to its toxic metabolite, and that leads to the damage to the DNA. Nitroimidazoles are activated by the parasite via reduction, you can see over here, to an anion radical. So metabolite which is formed is an anionic radical, and this highly reactive anionic radical is responsible because it is carrying a charge, so it will cause a damage to the DNA and even to certain proteins, and that leads to the death of the parasite. Now since there is a death of the parasite, metronidazole will come under the category of the SIDL drug. Not only that, it is a specifically acting drug because it will get specifically reduced by the ferredoxine, which is present only in the Giardia, Entamoeba histolytica and Trichomonas, and it is not present in the host tissue. So the drug is acting specifically only against the protozoal infection. So these are all the points which you have to explain when the mechanism of action of metronidazole is asked. Now we are going to the pharmacokinetic properties of metronidazole. It can be given orally, but in emergency situation it can be even given intravenously. Its absorption is rapid and complete. Due to its rapid absorption, we cannot rely on metronidazole only for luminal infection, or then you have to give in combination with certain luminicide drug if you know that the infection is only restricted to the intestine. The drug gets widely distributed into the various tissues. It can achieve a desired concentration even in the CSF, saliva, as well as the milk. The plasma protein binding of the drug is very low, so the drug interactions due to the plasma protein binding are low in case of metronidazole. It is less than 20%. The drug is primarily getting metabolized in liver by the process of oxidation, followed with the conjugation of glucuronide, and then that gets excreted out of the body. The plasma is around 8 hours. The next drug is a tinidazole. Now, tinidazole has a longer duration of the action. Tinidazole shares the same mechanism as that of a metronidazole. The only difference is that it has a longer duration of the action, and because it has a longer duration of the action, it is not required to be taken repeatedly. It can be, the dosing regimen becomes very simpler. As compared to the metronidazole, it is less toxic, but if efficacy wise, if you see, it is equally effective as that of a metronidazole, and therefore obviously the choice over the metronidazole will be of tinidazole, because efficacy matches and it has a longer duration of the action, so frequency of administration is less, and therefore tinidazole is preferred over the metronidazole. Even its why it has a longer duration? Because its metabolism is taking place very slowly. We have seen the T-half of the metronidazole was 8 hours. Here you can see T-half of this drug is around 12 hours, and therefore its duration of action is longer, and dosage regimen becomes very simple. A single dose in a day is sufficient to take care of the infection. Another drug is secnidazole. This is a Cogner, a derivative of metronidazole, having the same spectrum of the activity as we have discussed in the metronidazole. There is a rapid absorption after oral administration, and there is a complete absorption. But once the drug enters into the circulation, the rate of metabolism is very slow, and the T-half of the drug is much higher than that of metronidazole. It is around 17 to 29 hours. And after 48 hours of a single 2-gram dose, the secnidazole concentration, you can see, it still remains within the range of the this minimum inhibitory concentration value against the sensitive organism. So this is almost similar to the metronidazole. Side effects are there, but frequency of the side effect is comparatively lower as compared to metronidazole.